Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Veeraj Show. Today's episode was indeed a special one for me, as it was with my wife, Dr. Kruti. We discussed a bunch of things. We discussed about her life in America, how it was difficult as an immigrant to move from India and adjust here. We discussed about her undergraduate choices, about bullying, about anxiety, about panic attacks, but above all, her life and how she's managed to manifest it in a way that she wanted. We've also provided tons of tips to students who are planning to come to USA, who are also already in USA, how they can improve their focus levels, whether they should be pursuing Ph.D. or whether they should be looking at a corporate career. This was a conversation that actually made me know more about my wife, and I'm thrilled to share this with you. This is something that I always wanted to do, and I'm sure you're going to have a great time listening to this. So without further ado, the first episode of The Veeraj Show. Hello and welcome everyone to our first episode of The Veeraj Show, and I am so excited to bring you my first guest, and it's my wife, Dr. Kruti Surti. Hello Kruti, how are you?
I'm good, thank you for having me.
How does it feel to be on the first podcast?
I'm very excited and I'm very anxious to see how this turns out.
Yeah, no, the anxiety is actually both ways.
Yeah.
Because I am also doing this for the first time, but everything that I've built out through my content creation journey, it's basically for this.
Yeah.
So I am fingers crossed and let's see if it works out. But with that, I think firstly I want to thank you so much. It means a lot that you're coming on as a first guest. You helped me out so much with all of the setup and everything. So I just want to thank you. And I think it's going to be a very interesting podcast because we're going to discuss a lot of things about your life, which probably I think some of the things that even I don't know, and I think the audience will be interested to find out. So I'll start with this. You came to US in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And you were what, 8 years old?
Yeah, I was about 8 or 9. It was in 2002.
It was in 2002, so you were 8 or 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
How was it as a child moving from India to USA at the time? How did you feel like, what were your thoughts? And how was the initial experience?
Yeah, I mean, coming to the US like after 9/11 is a totally different experience. Especially coming as a child, I didn't speak English. I was, I went to a Gujarati school in India, didn't speak English. So when I came here, I started school within a week of coming to the US. I had no idea what was going on in school in the first probably year or so. I remember getting lost my first day coming back on the bus. Like I didn't know what my stop was,
Wow.
So it just kind of shows I was completely disoriented and unfamiliar with my surroundings for the first probably year or two.
Wow. And as a child, that must have been a difficult experience. You must have been like, why did I come here? Did it ever occur to you like at that time like, oh, you want to go back? This feels very uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, definitely. I felt like, what am I doing here? I was initially excited to come to America because I'd heard all these great things about being here that I had heard, in school, like you wouldn't even get homework, like you wouldn't have to carry these like heavy books and stuff. But coming here, I realized it's really not that simple. It's a lot of adjustment. So yeah, first few years probably I remember feeling homesick, about wanting to go back to India. Yeah.
And I think your parents also moved when quite a later part, right. of their life as well.
Yeah.
It must have been a harder transition for them because they've almost lived, 40-45 years of their life in the US. So how did they manage? What was their thoughts and how you as a family, managed that situation?
Yeah, and that's where, again, kind of moving after 9/11 comes into play, is that the job market was not that great. So my dad and mom really had to adjust quite a bit to find a source of income. And, my dad was an engineer and I was in the business field. So it kind of shows how much pivoting they had to do to make sure we were able to sustain ourselves in the US.
Yeah, I think, even I came when I was 22 years old, and I feel like there's always that adjustment period that happens when you come to US, right? So with that, what was the turning point? And just, if I had to ask you, what were the 3 or 4 things that eventually helped you transition to life in US?
Yeah, I think the first thing is making friends here. Again, I grew up in a very white suburban environment. So because I moved to Chicago first, in Chicago area, and then we moved to Missouri, which is definitely a much more, there's a lot less Indian population. And so making friends in the US was like a big, validating thing that happened for me. It helped me see okay, I could maybe adjust here. I could, see myself living here once I had a few friends. Liking the food, that was the other thing. I think people don't realize how hard it is to adjust to the American food because it tastes very different from Indian food, right?
It does.
Even the taste of cheese is very different here. So making friends, liking the food, and then building having an apartment or a home or whatever, wherever you're living, finding objects to put in it that make you feel comfortable. I think that's the other thing, slowly accumulating objects that help you feel a source of comfort. Those 3 things.
So the food is such an important point that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because the first time you try a Subway, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
Right? Or even a pizza for that matter. And then once you eat it once, twice, thrice, then eventually you get the taste of it. And then, you like it actually.
Yeah.
So it grows on you.
It definitely does.
And I think people really underestimate that when they first come to US.
Absolutely.
The food, the first time will taste different, but as you eat it, it grows on you.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a learning curve. It's an acquired taste.
It's an acquired taste for sure.
Yeah, and especially when I came here, it was 2002. In India, Subway, Pizza Hut, Domino's was not really as big yet.
Yeah.
So when I moved here, I was not used to eating Subway and pizza. I had barely even heard those terms. So for me, it was a completely different world compared to those people coming now.
Yeah, I mean, you came in 2001. I came in 2016, and I still wasn't used to eating those much. So it was definitely an adjustment period. It takes you time for sure. Yeah. But one of the things I think that you actually mentioned right now is you were switching from Gujarati and then you started learning English here. So from a schooling aspect, as a 8-9-year-old, how difficult was that? Because if you wanted to make friends and you were in a white suburban area, how did you make friends? And how much time did it take you to learn English? That must have been an adaptation period as well, right?
Yeah, that's the part I don't quite remember that well, is how long it took me to become fluent in English. I had an English as a second language teacher, so ESL teacher for I think the first couple of years, and periodically they would test me for my English knowledge, but I'm not sure there was one specific moment that I realized I'm fluent in English. I think my friends that I had made in my first couple of years, at least in Missouri, they were white, and I think I was just communicating with them in phrases and sentences. And I think a part of me has kind of repressed a lot of those memories probably because they were so they were just so probably hard on me as a kid. I don't even remember. So I think it's all a blur right now in terms of those specific moments of how I learned English. But I do think that it happened probably pretty gradually, and I picked up on a lot of the slang first, I think, and then I eventually learned the grammar and the sentence structure stuff.
Makes sense. I think I'd want to actually touch on a fragile topic as well. One of the things that at least I've learned by seeing through web series and movies in US, that bullying is actually quite common. as someone, in that raw age exposing to bullying, were you exposed to bullying? How was,
Yeah.
and if so, how was that? Like, can you share a story if you're okay with it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a little bit of bullying, right? Because I used to take like Indian food to school. That was always weird to people around me. And again, there wasn't a lot of representation of Indians in the media at the time. So they're like, to them, our culture was just very different and odd. And there were moments where like people thought it was interesting and cool. Like my teachers in elementary school really liked my culture and they wanted me to dress up in an Indian dress, and like I even like danced in front of my class a few times, during elementary school. But as I got into middle school and high school, that's where like the bullying part of it started, where I had several instances where I was bullied for my hair, for my skin color. I even had someone put gum in my hair, like those kinds of instances, just because I had a different hair texture, a different skin tone than them.
Wow. Do you think it's become worse now?
I don't know for sure. I don't have anyone around me right now that's like in high school or middle school right now, but I'm sure it's different. Like I think now it's more online sort of, not bullying, but like online exclusion, online hate maybe.
What we saw in that kind of like the adolescence web series.
Adolescence show, it kind of touches on that, but I'm assuming it's probably worse for immigrants as well as people like from other marginalized communities.
So let's say if I'm on the other side, right? If I have to advise someone on how to firstly prevent bullying, and if it happens, how to deal with it. What are like some suggestions or tips you would give on that?
I mean, I think a lot of schools have like counselors. Those would be the first people to rely on. But I think a lot of kids don't want to rely on that, right? So
why? So is there a stigma associated?
I think there is, right? Like as when you're a kid, when you are a teenager, you don't want to admit you're having trouble at school. So I think most kids, from what I can tell, don't tell their parents, don't want to talk about it with their loved ones. I think if kids are able to create communities outside of school, for example, a lot of Indians go to like temples on the weekend, or a lot of them have other like communities of people around them that also belong to the same group as them. That can be a great way to not necessarily prevent bullying, but at least reduce the effects of it on the child or the teenager. So giving them access to different, like as a parent or as a person being a caregiver to a teenager, I think giving access to different communities can lessen the effects of bullying in one space, Right. I think those are the things that comes to mind right now for me.
So it's like sharing it with someone from their age group and so on.
Maybe like other social support, right? Social support is really the best way to
cope with it.
Cope with a lot of the things you go through when you are a teenager. When you have a good social group, a social circle, you feel a lot less alone in those instances.
It's like if you have a group, then people would probably not want to bully you because they have a group that might stand up for you.
Right. I mean, in school,
or might take a stand for you, fight back.
In school, definitely. But even if you don't have that at school, if you can build that outside of school through other extracurricular activities in the community, that can also help. So even at school, if you're having a hard time, you at least have these other outlets where you are experiencing more acceptance, which I think a lot of people are finding in this day and age through online communities, through different fandoms, through different interests and things like that.
Correct. So now that we've talked about the change and kind of how difficult it was, the question that I have in mind is, how is the American schooling, or what are top three things about American schooling that you probably wouldn't have experienced in India, or that really helped your personality, or just a holistic, just helped you, holistically?
I think in America, and I think you've touched on this before when we've talked about it before, is there's a lot more like active learning happening in the classroom in in American classes. In fact, a little too much. I mean, nowadays there's some people arguing that there's too much group activities and active learning things happening rather than lecturing, which is probably more of the approach in India's school systems as far as I know.
Yeah.
There's also a lot more focus on memorization of materials, which is not the case here. Like, teachers don't really give you the answers, like they want to get that out of you. So like, for example, if in my English class, I remember like we would read the book at home and we would just talk about the book in class, and we would have discussions, and the teacher would just sort of be a discussion moderator. Whereas in India, like,
rote learning.
Yeah, it's like you memorize the answers to about the story, you know, if you read a book or something.
Right.
So I think that really shapes your critical thinking skills. So that would be the first one, like critical thinking skills. Public speaking skills as well, I'm sure, because we were asked to give presentations all the time in elementary school, middle school, high school, which I'm not sure if you get to do that unless you participate in like annual functions and things like that, right?
Correct.
And then third is I think just overall sense of confidence and self-efficacy, because again, if you're constantly put on the spot, like the teacher can call on you at any time to answer specific questions, you become a lot more confident in your...
The extempore confidence rule, right? The ability to speak on a topic extempore.
Like spontaneous answering ability.
So, how was the experience like when you went to USA, say for the first, whatever time, and then you went back to India for maybe, just a visit, 2-3 weeks? How did things change? Did things change?
Yeah.
What was your outlook then?
Yeah, so I came in 2002. The first time I went back to India was in 2005.
Okay, 3 years.
I remember Doom was like coming out at the time. Like we were everywhere. There were
Johnny Abraham was everywhere.
Johnny Abraham and Uday Chopra. And like I had changed pretty drastically by that point, because I remember I was a lot more introverted now, because I'm an only child. I didn't really get to play outside a lot. Being in America, like I think that's a difference too. Kids don't play outside as much. I mean, in the community that I was in, like we didn't have any kids around us that I would play with. So I was a lot more introverted. I was a lot more like, I just want to be by myself. Just leave me alone with my gadgets. Which I don't even remember if I had a phone then, but just like I would just watch TV or something.
Right.
Whereas in India, like people are constantly going in and out. Like there are aunties and uncles and neighbors like constantly just visiting, and then there's so many different sounds, and I just was overwhelmed, and like I felt like, what am I doing here? So that was my experience. I don't know if you had that.
I think one of the things
you
is
visited India after being here.
Yeah, so in Mumbai, especially in a city, there's so much cacophony. There's so much noise, and then once you're settled, especially I was in a college town, Champaign, right? So it's so peaceful that once you go back, that noise hits you.
Yeah.
Secondly, there's a typical Mumbai smell. There's the first thing that, you could close my eyes and I'd still know I'm in Mumbai. Right? That's the thing. But also what happens is, once you are in US, you're accustomed to a way of life. Which is very standard, routine, mundane, so as to call it. And then when you go for 3 or 2 weeks, it feels so rushed in Mumbai or anywhere that you always feel like, they're not settled. And the worst part, I think, which I've called out in a video is like, if you've lived so long in India and then you come back, your soul almost splits, because there are things about your home that you will always love. But then there are things about US that you love, and those can't be merged ever. Right? So you are always going to be in that fix, because for example, the food, my parents and so on, they're always back home. So I always miss them. But then the life here is really good. Right? You settled here
Quality
and stuff.
of life,
and there's a routine about you. So, you kind of become a guest in your own house. In a way.
I guess that's where like we're different, because I
you
had
had
my
your parents
family here.
Correct. Exactly.
And I was much younger, so to me over time, like US became my home, and India feels kind of like this outside environment, like So yeah, I see what I see what you mean though.
Nice. So once you transition from your school, when we are in India, for example, and let's say you have take a major, let's say you took science.
Yeah.
In India, there is a saying that first you do engineering, then you figure out what you want to do in life.
Uh-huh.
Whereas here, once you get into undergrad, you have options.
Options, yeah.
So tell me about this. Was psychology always something that you wanted to do, or was it something that you wanted else to do, and then you figured out that maybe that was not your thing, and psychology was your thing?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's kind of not a misconception, but there is a little bit of misconception around you don't need to know your major in high school. I think a lot of the times, at least with again the AC community here, we do kind of start high school with some kind of a plan of some sort of plan that what trajectory you're going to go in. At least the kids that I've met, we don't let our kids just do whatever they want to do, take a lot of art classes. Yeah, the tiger parents are not going to just let them do willy-nilly, whatever they want.
Yeah.
A lot of them probably have some ideas in mind. Maybe this kid's really great at math. Maybe they're going to take a lot more math classes in high school. If they're really good at science, they're going to take more science classes. Or those are usually the only two options.
Are they called the APs or something?
There are AP classes, but within each subject, so you can take AP history, you could take AP government, you can take AP psychology.
And what's AP?
AP is advanced placement classes, which means that if you take that class, at the end of that class, there's an exam, a standardized exam, like the GRE almost, that you give in relation to that class. And if you get, I think, a 3 or above, usually that score can translate over into college, so it can kind of so a lot of colleges accept that as a college course. So it's advanced placement, meaning that it's you're taking essentially a college course in high school. There are also some IB classes, I think, in some schools where it's kind of the same thing. I think it's international baccalaureate classes, which basically you are taking these classes as for college credit-ish, if the college accepts that.
Got it. So let's say, looking back again, I think, for example, typically to apply for these undergrad, you need a SAT score, you need probably a statement of purpose. And
in the Midwest where I'm from, we only needed the ACT.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you want to get into the top colleges and so on, what are the 2 or 3 best tips you would give to students, maybe who are coming for their masters or who are coming for their undergrad, so that they have the best chance to find employment and to succeed and or getting to the best universities?
For masters or for undergrad?
For both.
To get into undergrad.
Both, if it's generic advice, if not, if it's niche.
I mean, nowadays I think it's gotten so much more competitive, right? Even to get into, if you're coming from India, I think it's a totally different ball game, right? Or if you're coming from a different country trying to apply for undergrad or grad school, it's going to be a totally different process than if you are raising a child here.
Yeah.
Again, I think in both cases though, extracurriculars are so emphasized in the US. So again, in India, a lot of us only study. We only study the whatever is covered in the class. That's all we're focusing on. In America, kids are playing sports. If you are really good at a sport, you could get sports scholarships to get into undergraduate programs. If you are good at theater, or I don't know, if you're really interested in debate, or there's so many different options you can really become good at within that field, within that club or organization, and that could also be a way that you can get scholarships to get into undergraduate programs. Whereas I think a lot of Indian students or other immigrant students might not understand that as a way to get into college.
Right. So sports and extracurriculars they emphasize. And actually that's the thing that is lacking somewhere. As immigrants, we are so rounded to study that we just develop a singular personality of studying for hours.
Right.
Whereas that holistic aspect is really emphasized here, right? You really build your personality by taking part in, public speaking, or
Right.
by taking part in a sport. And if you do well, there's still an option for you to pursue that career while doing your master's or whatever it is.
Yeah, master's is different.
Or undergrad.
Yeah, I think I was focusing more on undergraduate. But yeah, master's is a different set of requirements, right? And that will really depend on what program you want to go in.
Right. Makes sense. So I'll come back to this question. How did you figure out that psychology is what you wanted to do?
Okay, yeah. So I went into my high school with the idea that I would try to do something in the science field because math was not my favorite subject. So I was like, I liked biology. I liked, I think biology was my favorite science topic. Chemistry, not so much, but So I kind of felt like I was trying to get into that route. So I had been taking those classes in high school. I had also taken AP psychology, but that was never my plan to pursue psychology. I went into undergraduate program with my major declared as biochem, biotech. That was the major. And my first year, I started taking all these science classes and math class. I was taking math for engineering students, and I realized, I should mention, my overall goal was to become an optometrist. By that point, I was going to become an optometrist, and I chose my school because they had a really great optometry program, and so my plan was I could do a 7-year optometry program if I went to that college, so I went into that college for that purpose. My first year, started taking all these classes. I was not happy. I was not happy at all. I felt like I was being tortured in a lot of these classes. And it's funny because I still enjoyed my biology classes, but I just did not enjoy my math. And I knew I would take up physics eventually, and I was like, this is not going well.
Right.
And I realized that within my first year. And so I had a roommate who was declaring her major as psychology, and it reminded me that I had also taken AP psychology and really enjoyed it, and I had passed that AP exam and stuff. So I kind of felt okay, let's rewind, let's kind of reflect on what are the classes I really enjoyed in high school and so far in college, what am I enjoying? And then based on that, I decided I think psychology could be a really great balance between that science and that more social science part. So that's why I think I decided to go into psychology. So I ended up declaring my major as psychology with a biology minor. So overall, what I wanted to do was actually neuroscience. That's what my initial that's what at the time I didn't know that term, but that's what I was kind of gearing to go into, because I loved biology, but I did not want to do the other parts of science.
Fair enough. No. But then, what caused you, or why did you want to become an optometrist in the first place, in the sense? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So again, in Indian culture, you become a doctor or an engineer. I knew I was not cut out to be going to med school, but I also wanted to be called a doctor, because that was the only option. And I knew engineering was not going to work for me if I was not a math person.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, I want to become a doctor, but not become a medical doctor, go to med school.
Right.
So then we started looking up other fields within healthcare that had that. So you could become a dentist, you can become an optometrist. I mean, you could also do
Did you consider dentistry?
Absolutely not. I hate teeth. I do not want to look into people's mouths. So yeah, so that was not going to be an option for me. I never considered that for 1 second. But my cousin is an optometrist, so she was studying to be an optometrist at the time, and I heard about the field, and I was like, that's cool. I love eyes. Eyes are so beautiful. I realized now how crazy that sounds, but I was like, that sounds cool. So I was like, optometry, that's amazing. And we had a school that was within the hour that had a 7-year optometry program, really highly rated. So I was like, this just fits really well with what my family would be agreeing with and what I would be happy with.
Yeah. I have a very interesting question here. You've been on both sides of the aisle, and what I mean by that is you've been a student and now you're a professor,
Yeah.
right? You've experienced education in that era, and now you're teaching students now. Tell me how it's changed.
Oh, very, very drastically, right? Like two big reasons that I can think of off the top of my head. The pandemic clearly changed the way we learn, the way we engage with each other has changed. Changed the way higher education works, and then second is AI, right? Like now you can't ignore that that's a thing. That's going to be a part of our day-to-day life, and that's a part of our college students' lives. So those two things has drastically changed the way students come to you in class. And so with the pandemic, I think students became a lot more, a lot less social. And now I teach fully online, so I work with online students. But even when I was teaching in person, students are not great at public speaking. They're not great at writing. Writing skills are just
dropping, right?
Yes, and I mean that's across the board, not just in college, but across all
focus levels are
stage
going
of
down.
focus level, and that's probably because of technology,
Right.
phones and all of that. And then AI has now made it so just 2 years ago I was like, oh, people's writing skills are decreasing so much, and now all the papers are written so perfectly because everyone has AI, right? So so that kind of made it. Now it makes you think, like, is teaching writing going to change? Like, how do we teach writing? Is that even going to be a main priority if AI is doing this for you?
It's like how people used to do calculations and then calculators came in.
Yeah.
So they don't do
do
basic math or calculation because
Yeah.
or they learn it,
Yes.
but then they always revert
But
to
then they
calculator.
always, exactly. I think at some point, you don't really end up doing the calculations by hand, and I think more and more people are fully relying on calculators to do their math.
I think here's an important thing that I want to dive deeper here as well, which is you mentioned the math levels, the public speaking levels, the focus levels, they're all going down.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, especially like what should the education system be doing to increase those? Are there some things that you've noticed that could be done better to increase those levels or to help with that, because they're consistently dropping year over year?
Yeah. I think one of the issues with a lot of higher education and then general education is we're very slow to adapt to changes. Right now, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of people in the field are scared of AI, and I think at this point we need to use it. We need to utilize it, and I think the best way to teach these kids and students about math and science and English or whatever is to gamify it. I think if we are able to use AI to create games, to serve as tutoring, to serve as personalized mentors, tutors, I think that's a great way to help them learn these skills using the tools that they're already going to be using anyways. So instead of us trying to force them to not use it in our classes, maybe we need to develop these tools even better to where they can serve as tutors and little games that they can play to learn these skills.
So you think the best way to kind of improve these levels is to kind of now treat subjects as almost games?
Yeah, gamifying
them.
That's my theory. I mean, again, none of us have the right answers. I think if we did, we would have already implemented that.
And what about focus levels?
Yeah.
I think, for example, at least in my time, the schools were banned from having phones. Is this something that should be done? Like, what do we do about, or even me, I see my focus levels dropping from what I was. And as a neuroscience, or psychology, give me top 3 things we can do to improve our focus levels.
I mean, I think we all know what to do, right? We know we should keep our phones away while we're working. There are so many tools that you can use to turn off your internet or turn your phone into this black and white version, so you're not getting hit with so much stimuli all the time. So we know what to do. I think it's a matter of how can we convince ourselves to do it. And again, I think that's where the gamifying thing works. Our brains love rewards, so if you are able to create kind of like a system where you stay away from your phone
for X number of
and then you get some kind of a reward.
Right.
That could work for some people. There's never going to be one solution fits all. That's not going to be a thing, but like if you can if you like for some people it's only 30 minutes. They can only do 30 minutes of focused work and then they need their phone. So that's where the whole Pomodoro technique comes into play, where you work for 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break, and you do that a few times, and then you take a longer break. And I think it's also okay, like I think that's where the self-compassion part comes in. We are so hard on ourselves sometimes when we are not able to stay focused that like we get frustrated, and now we're even more unfocused.
Yeah, correct.
When you do lose focus, we can like gently, if we catch ourselves, like mindfulness, if we can catch ourselves that, hey, I'm distracted, I'm now scrolling on Instagram for 10 minutes, maybe let's start to put it away a little bit. Let's start to get back to work. Maybe let's just open the document. You don't have to work on it, you can just open it. If we can like parent ourselves into focus again, and you keep practicing that process of you get distracted, you gentle parent yourself back into focus, get distracted, and that could work well.
Right. Actually, I'm a big believer in David Goggins, and he kind of transformed my life, right? But he always advocates that do hard things, and you have to kind of cut it off. And sometimes like the best way to do is just grind through hard stuff.
Yeah.
Versus the approach you mentioned is a gentler approach to eventually getting better.
Yeah.
Do you have any opinion on that, firstly?
Again, I think it works for some people to be hard, to cut things off and like do streaks, or like make sure for you it works really well, like you working out every single day. It has been helpful for you and it helps you build momentum. It's a great way to build momentum. For some people, that might not fit their lifestyle. There could be so many other factors that could prevent them from being as consistent or being like rigid about things, right? So that's where we can't, again, apply the one size fits all. So if we're able to, again, be mindful. I think mindfulness can work for most people, because if we're realizing like, hey, I'm falling off the wagon here with this habit I'm trying to do, we can catch ourselves and slowly bring ourselves back on track. And that could work. And the reason I'm saying this is like, again, people could be going through a lot of mental health conditions, a lot of external factors could be playing a role. So it definitely is an approach that works for some people. And a lot of people find it very helpful. Like 75 Hard seems to be a really popular workout and like lifestyle approach because of that. But for others, it might not be a good fit. So
fair enough.
That's where testing it out.
What works for you?
Yeah.
It could be like for example, doing something every day might be just very hard. You might 5 days a week might be a good cadence.
Yes.
Or for example, for some people, like if they miss out on a day, it affects them so much more that it might just cause a negative spiral.
Yeah.
Lack of confidence. So right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So it might be mindfulness might be a better thing. That hey, it's fine, it's happened. Let's start afresh.
Yes.
Or give yourself
that's
those
what I do.
2 days.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if I fall off the wagon in a habit that I'm a part of or I'm trying to build, I realize like, oh, I didn't go work out today.
Yeah.
That's that happened. That wasn't great, but let's see if we can make it tomorrow. Let's try to make it an intention to go tomorrow. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of us struggle from perfectionism.
Yeah.
Especially I do. So that's why I'm not always prescribing to the whole like David Goggins idea of like
That's fair.
stay hard and, you know.
Yeah.
Because I will stay hard and then it'll not be very healthy. It will be very unhealthy of me to try to stay hard.
Fair enough. No, totally. I think you do you.
Yes,
What works best.
that is exactly, yeah.
So I think when somebody finishes their bachelor's or even for their master's,
Mhm.
right? You have the option to go for a PhD or to jump into corporate world, or you know, to get into your occupation, like
Right.
work. For me, I was done at the time of my master's. I was like, I wanted to make money, jumped into corporate. How would you help someone who's confused decide whether to pursue PhD or whether to jump into corporate? How did you even make that decision?
I think that's really all boils down to your field.
Mhm.
Like being in an engineering field, being in a like business field, those types of fields have direct pathways into
Mhm.
employment right after undergraduate. Whereas in fields like psychology, even biology, I would say, like it's hard to jump into employment directly. Like I think you do need a master's or a PhD to get a full-time job. That from my experience, and so I didn't have a choice. Like I knew as soon as I declared my major psychology, taking my first class, it was very clear to me that I'm going to have to go into graduate school and pursue at least a master's, if not a PhD. PhD was like probably going to be the main route that I took, but even if I didn't do that, I would have to do a master's. But for engineering and for other fields, like I don't think you need it. So you shouldn't do it unless you really want to do it, because in your fields, I think it's not necessary.
And how hard is it to do a PhD? I think that's a question that might help decide whether they want to. I felt masters was extremely hard.
Oh, PhD is, yeah, like it's like continuing your master's, right? It's like imagine doing it for 4 years instead of 2 years. So maybe even harder, especially if you are in a field where you have to do a dissertation, which is what I did. Like if you're doing a PhD, you have to complete a dissertation project. So a lot more research, a lot less applied thinking, a lot more like a lot more studying, a lot more memorization sort of stuff. And so I think, if you don't like that, if you don't like research, if you don't like sitting in front of your computer for hours just writing and you know, finding articles, finding things to support your project, don't do it.
Okay. Fair enough. And even from a PhD aspect, what do you think were the benefits that help you?
I think
that might be a good decision maker too for someone. Like,
yeah.
What were the benefits that you felt having pursued a PhD? I mean, especially with the doctorate tag that you do have.
Yes, I think that's definitely a perk, having the doctor tag. But I think more than that, it teaches you patience. It teaches
it's a virtue.
it teaches you that good things take time. It helps you deal with failure a lot more, because you're constantly failing when you're in PhD. You're constantly being put on the spot, and you just become a lot more knowledgeable about a lot of things, and you become interested in learning, which I think I became a lot. Like I love to learn things when I don't know something. I'm curious. It teaches you curiosity. It teaches you to be open-minded, to be flexible with solutions.
True. And I know for a fact that when you were doing your PhD was also the time when the pandemic happened. So how was it navigating that during the pandemic?
Yeah. That definitely tested my adaptability skills, because as soon as I started my dissertation project, schools closed down and we were in lockdown, right? So I had to pivot my project from an in-person study, psychology study, to an online study. So I didn't get to do the project that I wanted, and my project was about self-love, and I was really excited to have one of the first studies around self-love.
Right.
in person, and then I had to pivot to like a survey study, which was fine, which we finished and we were able to do successfully, but it made me it kind of changed the trajectory of the research path that I ended up taking.
Right.
And I also applied for jobs during the pandemic, so all my interviews during the pandemic were virtual. So I picked my first job virtually, didn't know, my first job was in Mississippi, had never been to Mississippi. I did both of my rounds of interviews online.
Yeah.
I just went off vibes. Like I just looked at the Zoom screens and the people that were on the Zoom screen.
Yeah.
They seemed nice enough, the vibes looked okay, so I accepted it and I was like, this is it, this is what we're gonna go with, you know?
Yeah. I think navigating the pandemic was definitely a unique challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But again, so were you clear when you did your PhD that you wanted to go into teaching? And the reason I ask is because I think psychology also has a clinical aspect to it.
Yes.
Right? Were you sure you wanted to do teaching, or was clinical also an aspect and you tried it and maybe something happened, you didn't want to do it?
Yeah, so that's a good point. And I don't know if the audience would know this, but my background is in neuroscience psychology, not in clinical psychology.
Okay. So that's a totally different topic.
Yeah, it's like psychology is very vast. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of different subfields within psychology. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like engineering. You could do financial engineering, you could do computer engineering, whatever. Yeah, a bunch of different options, right? So just like that within psychology, you could become a clinical psychologist where you get where you complete your Ph.D. or Ph.D. and you get your license and you become a psychologist and work in a therapeutic sort of setting. I was in neuroscience, so my options were either teaching or research mostly. Now, there is a third kind of narrow option of maybe going into industry through your research. Mm-hmm. That felt very out of place for me because my research topic was on love and self-love, and that was not really a field with a lot of scope in the industry. So I knew I was going to either do academia. I knew I was going to do academia, but within academia, was I going to do research sort of position or teaching position? Yeah. And as I got into my third or fourth year of grad school, I was already doing graduate teaching assistantships, and I was getting opportunities to teach guest lecturing classes and things like that. And I just realized I really enjoyed teaching. So I ended up doing a teaching certificate that was offered through my college, and that's how I prepared to go down the teaching track. I just realized I love to talk to people and teach people.
So if I'm correct, you lived in Illinois and then moved to St. Louis mm-hmm. or Missouri, and then you were in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So at a controversial question, which one do you rate higher? Or let's even take the ratings of the picture. What's the best parts about each of these states?
Okay. Yeah, that's I think a better way to look at it. So I've never lived on the coast, which is something that it often hits me as wait, I've only really lived in the Midwest or the South.
The Southern,
Missouri is similar to where we are now, I would say, in terms of it's a very suburban location, and I think that the best part about Missouri, and I think I would say more so than the suburb that I lived in, St. Louis is an underrated city in my opinion. I think the food culture there, the art scene, and the type of people that live there are very very cool, very motivated, very exciting, cultured. So I really enjoyed that part of being in St. Louis during college and grad school. Mm-hmm. In Mississippi, I think again, Mississippi gets talked about pretty badly in the media, and of course.
I loved it.
Yeah, I think it's a very quiet, slow-paced living. If you're really someone who enjoys being at home, if you're a homebody, The cost of living is so great.
Yeah.
The people were so kind and for the most part, like very hospitable, very very kind, very like, and because there's so few like underrepresented communities, like we kind of become more closer quickly.
Yeah.
Like we did, like I think we got closer to a lot of the South Asian subcontinent folks because of that. Whereas I think now I actually, like we live around a lot of other South Asians and people from people from our part of the world, and I don't think we engage as much with them.
Totally. I think I just have pleasant memories.
Yeah.
From Mississippi or
a lot of great food there too.
Oh, fewer restaurants, but amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Hattiesburg, I think, is hands down the best place.
Yes.
Highly recommended, especially if
you're
you want to go for.
Hattiesburg is great.
Yes, for eating. They have few
even
restaurants.
The Gulfport area.
Too good.
Yeah.
Yep. Gulfport was a great place as well.
Yeah.
I highly recommend that place to check out.
Definitely.
Especially if you're gonna go into eating. It's just 2 hours from New Orleans.
Yeah.
Now moving on to the next topic. So now you are in the teaching faculty or in the teaching profession, and within the teaching profession, we've seen how AI has transformed ways of working.
Yes.
Right? Like literally now, if first I was just using Google 100%,
yes,
it's now a 50-50 split.
Now, yeah.
Right? Where
even
I am using AI actively every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's become a habit. Like if I have to think something, the first thought is ask ChatGPT.
Yes. Because even if you use Google now, they have AI embedded in it. So
correct. They give you the first answer, they give you AI.
Yeah, so it really doesn't matter if you're using...
And then they give you links.
Yeah.
So in that sense, as a professor, how have you had to adapt? Because I'm pretty sure you mentioned, right? People are turning in these beautiful answers which are actually written by AI. So especially, do you think now students should be taking, exams where they're not allowed phones or anything, or open book exams should be, done away with?
Yeah.
Or just, as is your experience, how has AI transformed teaching?
Yeah. And again, this is where the whole one-size-fits-all thing might not work because every field is different.
Yep.
But again, being a psychology professor, I teach statistics, I teach, again, like different psychological subjects like history of psychology, general psychology. In those classes, I teach online, which makes it even harder to not use AI because it's not like I can just administer exams in person and make it closed book and everything, right? I know a lot of colleges are bringing back the blue book exams where you come in and like you do the scantrons and like the old-fashioned ways of doing things. I can't do that. So I think this is where we again need to adapt, and some of the things that we've been talking about in our circles is like verbal assessments. For example, I just talk. Like you take the class with me, I want to teach students how to use AI correctly and ethically.
Yep.
So AI literacy is definitely very important. This is going to be part of their job. Like if I was an employer, I want my employees to know how to use AI efficiently, effectively.
Yep.
So I want to teach my students how to use it, but of course I want them to retain the knowledge that I'm trying to teach them. So this is where again using AI to tutor students to gamify some of the assignments in the class. That could be really helpful. And when it comes to exams, I think taking verbal assessments. So basically, you and I just meet over Zoom. If this is online class, you meet over Zoom with the professor, and I just ask you some questions, and you just kind of answer on the spot, like, what your response is to this, and that will help me assess, like, hey, did you learn anything? I think that's a good way to see if you've actually retained any of the information. And for writing assignments, this is where I question: do we need writing assignments? Like, or can we? And a lot of my colleagues and some of the assignments even I use now, we have students create an outline themselves, and then we sometimes have them use AI to create the first draft. Then we ask them to reflect on that draft themselves, and then we ask them to use AI to create a final draft. So I think it's going to become more of a merging of yourself and AI assignments instead of just purely having students write the assignments.
Yeah, I agree with that. So exam in its true sense may have to be changed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah,
you cannot just have typical exam because otherwise people are just going to turn in answers that are.
Exactly, yeah.
But you, at the same time, I think it comes back to the core fundamental, which is making sure that people have that knowledge.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, what is the objective of these things?
Like,
that's what we have to kind of go
there
back
is like
to.
the basic fundamentals.
Yes.
Like taking AI totally out of the picture, these are the fundamentals that you should know about the subject.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
And then you use AI to up-level yourself.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yes, and I think that's the objective. Like the objectives used to be to teach students how to write correctly, to format correctly.
Right.
Those objectives maybe need to be modified or even maybe removed from some of these classes because it's no longer necessary to teach students how to format an APA style or MLA style or whatever. Like it's no longer a priority. I think now we want them to know what a good paper looks like.
Right.
Like that should be the objective. Can you tell that the writing is good?
Right.
That AI is giving you? Is the information correct?
Yeah.
Is this article actually real? Because a lot of the times AI will hallucinate, and I think that will change over time. But being able to decipher if information is accurate is going to become the main goal.
Yes, agreed. So, you know what I have experienced here is that since AI has come, a lot of people have the ability to not actually do the regular or the whole undergraduate or whole study system.
Yeah.
Because they could actually just spend 2 years doing different courses which are already out there, even before AI.
Yeah.
And they could get to a skill set which would make them industry proficient or be able to work directly in the industry. Do you think because AI is going to help you learn things faster, get knowledge faster, that you're going to see decreasing students who want to, enrollment in and want to do an undergraduation program because it puts students in a huge loan as well, especially, right?
Yeah.
What do you think? Does universities have to adapt to that? Will they see lower attendance or enrollment?
But this is where I think professors and educators become even more important.
Okay.
Because you can learn a lot of information from AI.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot learn the skills that now you will actually need even more because AI can do a lot of the tasks that AI can teach you.
Yeah.
Public speaking skills are going to be even more important.
Yep.
Network is going to be more important.
Yep.
Being able to communicate effectively is going to be more important. Those are skills. Those are the jobs that they're going to need, right? Like if you're looking at your companies that a lot of people are applying to, half of the job force is being cut down because like a lot of those skills can be done by AI, but the thinking skills, the critical thinking, the active pursuing of things, like those are the skills that cannot be taught by AI that you can only learn with an educator because you are, by meeting with an educator, you are getting access to their network, you're getting access to their resources that they can give you that the AI cannot give you.
Yeah.
And more importantly, like you can practice using these skills with an educator. But if you're doing it by yourself, it's a lot harder to do that.
Fair, completely fair.
I don't know if that like.
No, I think it basically means that AI can, a lot of the tasks AI will already do for you.
Right.
So it's up to the industry and the universities to make sure how do they
adapt to that,
to make sure that you are still AI proof or you are still able to get a job or you're still able to up-level yourself. And so what are the courses? So every course will also need an upgrade.
Exactly. Yes, and that I think a lot of colleges are working on.
And more in sync with the industry, like more in sync with the actual corporate firms to understand what is your requirement, what are the tools you want us to teach. Right, and then incorporating that and teaching that to the students.
And that's, I think, exactly the phase we're in right now is to figure that out. Like, what can we do to make it more?
Like, if there's more cohesiveness between or
which
collaboration
I don't think there
between.
ever was, to be honest. I don't think higher ed was ever that cohesive with the industry. I'm going to be honest, and I think, like, and maybe some schools are more so than others, right? But I think it's been about time that
Yeah.
education system becomes a better transitioning for people.
Fair. I think if there is more collaboration,
Yeah.
for example, if the big tech collaborates with universities,
Yes.
they
Some
could share the
colleges
knowledge
do that,
like,
yeah.
hey, we need
Yeah,
a workforce that
internships,
knows this,
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So, as a computer engineer
Yeah.
coming out of undergrad, I already have the skill set to be
Yeah.
able to contribute to the firms.
Yes, I think this is where the whole apprenticeship model,
Correct.
I think, is going to
Exactly.
become more of a norm in a lot of
Capstone projects.
capstone projects, apprenticeships, internships, those types of projects. Less busy work, less
Correct.
tests,
Less coursework,
yeah,
more
practical
work.
Like students walking out with a portfolio
Correct.
of
Which helps build their resume.
Yes.
Help put those skills out.
Yes.
And especially when you are exposed to those things, your public speaking skills improve, your
Yes.
communication skills
And that
improve, your networking improves
Yes.
because you're given that network.
And
to
that
work
has to be part of the portfolio.
Exactly.
Like who do you know? Like what
with. Yeah,
presentations have you done?
Correct.
Like what projects have you created? And
Yep.
I think those are gonna be
Totally.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears.
Mm-hmm.
I want to move into a separate topic. And this is about anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and panic attack and stuff like that. Coming from India, I had no clue about
Yeah.
these things,
Mm-hmm.
right? I learned it
Yeah.
like living, with you, like I understood what it is and how you can help someone who is
Yes.
suffering. So tell me, when did you realize that you were an anxious person and about those things?
Yes.
Because I think this is a lot of people are anxious, they just don't know about it.
Yeah.
It really goes under the radar.
Yes. Especially I think again in like our
Our
part of the world.
Yep.
So much stigma around it, so much just lack of knowledge around it too.
Yeah.
I don't think I was anxious growing up, and if I was, I had no idea that I was. I think I really became aware of my anxiety maybe sophomore year of undergraduate program, when I was again changing majors and making these big life decisions. It really hit me that whatever decision I make, whatever things I choose to focus on from now on will determine the trajectory of my life. And that thought became kind of the central thought of my life for the rest of my life. Like even now, every day I wake up, I think about like every little choice I make is changing the trajectory of my life. And that overall like existential kind of fear, meaning of life kind of fear set in, and that's I think the underlying root of my anxiety. And yeah, so but to give you some symptoms of anxiety, is this like generalized anxiety. So this is a generalized anxiety disorder. Some people have a disorder. So I actually have the disorder, which means that I am constantly worried without any kind of reason. Like every thought I have is sort of this followed by this feeling of restlessness, feeling of worry, like unnecessary worrying, ruminating, a lot of what is it called? Like feeling like there's this sense of doom every second, like just constantly. Anything goes wrong, like you're like, this is the end, like that kind of feeling constantly. And it obviously goes up and down, like in terms of levels, right? So certain times of the day or certain times of the year, like it kind of goes up. If you have something stressful going on, it goes up more. But in general, you sort of have this demeanor of there's something that could go wrong at any moment. Yeah, without any reason to believe that. And that's what makes it a disorder, right? So again, to define a disorder, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Disorder is something that basically impairs your ability to function in day-to-day life efficiently, like easily, and something that is out of the norm. So like most people are not experiencing that. So that's what defines a disorder. So like I think that's what makes it a disorder. A lot of people feel anxious. Like if you have an exam, you could feel anxious because you're not sure how it's gonna go. That's feeling anxious. But anxiety itself, if you have an actual diagnosis, it's a lot more severe and more constant a lot of times.
So I think you mentioned like anxiety causes you to be worried, causes
Yes.
you to be...
It is that work. Anxiety is the worry itself. Yeah.
Are there any benefits? Do you think it prepares you more? Do you think it... Because I've seen that you always are able to,
Yeah.
predict this can go wrong, etc. Helps you to be extra prepared. Does it help you in any way?
Yeah, it's kind of like being in a fight or flight mode at all times, almost.
So I don't think it's helpful.
No, but it can be, right? Because when you do need to be in the fight or flight mode, I'm already in there. So if I need to be running from a bear in the jungle, I was already prepared. I already knew the bear was going to come at some point. But it's so I think a lot of anxious people, and that is again not always the case. Everyone's anxiety looks the same.
Yeah.
I have generalized anxiety. I'm anxious constantly. Some people are only anxious in social situations.
Yeah.
Some people are only anxious when they have a specific phobia or something.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm anxious all the time. So I think that's made me more conscientious. I've become a lot more prepared for things. I like to have time to prepare for things. I'm a lot less spontaneous because of it. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but yeah, I do end up carrying a lot of things to help me feel better, which can be helpful sometimes.
Yeah.
But a lot of the times it's very detrimental, right? Because life is unpredictable, and we have to sit with that discomfort to be a healthy human being. And when you have anxiety, you're not okay with that.
Yeah, makes sense. And so, what are the top 3 tips that you would give someone to manage this anxiety?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I studied emotion regulation, which is how to regulate your emotions. So we cannot change the outside circumstances in any given situation. We can choose how we respond to it, right? We can choose... Well, we could choose to be in that situation or not. You could remove yourself from the situation. You could choose not to pay attention to it, or you could change how you feel about it. Right. And so that's cognitive reappraisal, which is where you reframe the situation to something less negative if you're trying to cope with something negative. So if you didn't get the grade that you wanted and you're upset about that, you can say hey, this was just one exam.
Yeah.
It's not the end of my life. Maybe AI is going to take over these jobs anyways. Maybe there's something else better out there for me. You can you can reframe it to where it's not
so it's a mental conditioning that needs to change.
Yes, you have to train yourself to do that. So cognitive appraisal is the first one. Meditation is helpful. It kind of detaches you from your external environment if you practice enough. It makes you a lot more aware that, hey, this circumstances are not permanent. It's not going to stay like this. And you attach less of yourself to it. The outcome becomes less important to you. So meditation is helpful. And then, again, a lot of people just have very severe anxiety, and that case seeing a therapist. They can also give you a lot of tools, accepting it. Acceptance therapy is one of the ways you can do it too, where you accept the circumstance. You're this is what it is. That could be the first step to moving forward.
True. I think with therapy, I think the biggest thing is against the stigma.
Yes.
Especially in the subcontinent and so on, right? But proper therapy can really help you manage this or get over this as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. I think people go into therapy looking to be fixed, but they only can give you tools that you have to implement. You got to do the work yourself. Unfortunately, that's not going to be done for you.
Right.
But they can really teach you how to apply these strategies more effectively.
They think if I have fever, I go to a doctor.
And they give me meds.
And it's fixed.
Yeah.
But that's not how therapy is. Therapy is, we'll give you the tools, but you need to work with them over time.
Yes.
And then it will be manageable.
Yes. And
you have to manage it.
You have to manage it.
Yeah.
And they can help you see hey, this is maybe your blind spot. This is where you could think this way to help you feel better. Of course, there are medications too for anxiety. There are medications for depression and all these other conditions that you could also try out. Sometimes using both is super effective as well. A lot of people who have very severe anxiety or depression could try out both of them together, and that has research shows that's actually a really great way to deal with it.
True. I think I'm going to touch base now on a few things I think that can just help the general audience, right? I think, for example, one of the things that I see personally is I have ADHD, and basically I get distracted very easily. So as someone who's studied extensively neuroscience, what are some things you can tell me that will help me with with managing ADHD or getting better at it?
Yeah, I think there are so many communities now that, but whether it's on Facebook or other places that talk about this topic and how to manage ADHD. Of course, with ADHD, one of the hardest things is finding the ability to focus on a task, and being able to not get on with another task while you're working on the first one, right? Again, having less stimuli around you, less distraction around you is the first thing you can do. Again, trying to practice mindfulness. Maybe meditation is hard for people with ADHD, but if you can at least practice mindfulness, basically mindfulness is where you are doing the task and you're just kind of reminding yourself that you're doing the task. Even bringing yourself to that space where you are able to remind yourself hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on this, I'm working on this. Every few minutes trying to do that. That could be helpful. Again, a lot of these things take practice. So maybe streaks are helpful for you. I think that seems to be a really good way for you to do to utilize. So if you're someone who is motivated by seeing your achievements, seeing how far you've come, gamifying things can be really helpful. In terms of organizing your life, I know a lot of people with ADHD like to have things in their sight so that they can remember it and see it. Because they have a hard time remembering things that are not in front of them. So organizing your desk, organizing your life, your clothes, everything around you in a way that is easily visible, so that you can easily get to it. Even your computer, organizing your files in a way that easily accessible, so in the process of finding one file, you don't get distracted and go look for another.
Oh my god, that happens to me so much.
So
it's totally unorganized.
It's but that takes, you gotta be intentional and you gotta start somewhere, reset your life a little bit if you feel like you're having that trouble.
Fair enough. That brings me to another aspect actually, which is more about your study and dissertation, which was around self-love, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And also people who probably feel underconfident and they feel maybe depressed and so on. What were some of the things that you took from that studies, which would be helpful to those people to gain that self-confidence, to feel better about themselves?
What I've learned about confidence. So let's talk about self-love first. So my study was about increasing self-love. So that was my main goal with my research. I wanted to study strategies that we could use to increase self-love. And so what I had people do is I had them test out 3 different strategies. The first one is self-compassion, increasing your self-compassion and using self-compassion to increase your overall self-love. Second one is increasing your self-efficacy, meaning your confidence that you can complete a task, that you can do something successfully. How much do you think you are able to complete something? That's self-efficacy. So how, it's basically about your ability, how well you think you can do something. And then the third is reappraisal. So again, reappraising your thought process around your image. So those are the 3 strategies we tried, and what we found is all 3 of them really work. So basically what you can do if you want to increase your self-love is to, first of all, increase your self-compassion. So when you mess up,
be kinder on yourself.
Be kinder on yourself. Say, it's not
okay.
about
it's not the end of the world. let's try it again.
Like look how far you've come. You can do it. You've survived all the days of your life so far. You can survive this day too. That's one way to make yourself feel better. Self-efficacy, and that's where the confidence part comes in.
Right.
So if you start to do things, you do it successfully, that gives you more confidence to do it again.
Right.
So if you are anxious about doing something, I think like that's one of the first things you should do, even though that's really hard to do. But if you can do that, that increases your self-efficacy. That could increase your self-love. And then the third thing is changing your self-image. So that's where, if you feel like you are not a good-looking person, changing that mindset to saying like, I might not be, one person might not think I'm good looking, but hey, these other people do. Or like changing the way you see yourself, like looks are changing constantly. Looks are always, you can modify looks.
Right.
I can always change up my look. I can always change up my wardrobe, but my skills are my skills,
True.
Those types of things can help you increase self-love.
That's very good advice, I think, for the audience as well. I think a lot of people that, struggle with this could use this.
Yeah.
And I think you gave some really practical advice, so thank you. I think I'll close out by, I have a few rapid fire questions for you, which is the fun part.
Okay.
But I think one question that I see is, I think even with increasing self-love, we're in a society where it seems like in US, lesser and lesser people or even women want to get married. Do you think that has something to do with like the self-love or, the increasing changes in the society or the, just women being able to manage themselves or being able to work for themselves? Like, is this a trend you notice?
And I think, it's not just in the context of marriage. I think in general, communities are shrinking, right? Like, there's a lot less, people rely a lot less on each other. People feel pretty self-sufficient and are busy enough with their gadgets to not really need outside, outside a help, outside community, which is one of the factors that can lead to a lot of these mental health conditions, right? If you don't have a lot of social support, if you don't have a lot of people around you to help you
or
just be around you.
And then it can be unnerving to actually enter a social setting.
Yes, because you're
just so used to being alone or being with your gadget that's all that consumes your time.
And that's, I think, part of the reason why we are seeing less marriages and a lot less committed relationships as well. And I think that's not just with women, I think it's with men as well. I think there has been like misalignment of like what people are looking for with each other, with their partners, like what is considered an ideal partner. There has been a misalignment in both sides, in my opinion. So and that has to do with social media, obviously, right? Like the kind of messaging we hear, the kind of media we consume changes the way we think about the opposite side, if or not just opposite, but any kind of relationship. Like I think a lot of people view other people as kind of a dangerous thing. So that could be another reason why women are like, not afraid of committed relationships, especially in
more afraid of commitment in general.
Yes,
right?
any kind of commitment. Like even with friendships, right? We're seeing the same sort of decline.
Talking to people lesser.
Less friend groups,
lesser connections.
Less connections. A lot more like online friends. A lot more like digital acquaintances.
True.
So I think it's not just.
I think pandemic also worsened that in some ways.
Absolutely, right?
We're just stuck in our houses and just
we realize hey, we're okay without anybody. But I think in the long term we haven't been okay, right?
Absolutely.
I think individually we're all suffering from this feeling of numbness, the feeling of meaninglessness, the feeling of disconnectedness. We all feel it, but we're not willing to put the work in to build relationships.
Agreed. Cool. I think that almost wraps up our conversation, and it was truly beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't realize where time passed, and I just thank you so much
Thank you
for
having
this.
me. Yeah.
I'm just going to finally wrap up with a few rapid fire questions,
Awesome.
and I think that's the fun segment.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. I think there are 5,
Oh, okay.
and
So I have to,
let's see.
I have
We'll
to
look
answer
for-
as quickly as possible, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I've already covered this, but what was the biggest surprise you felt when you came to US?
I would say again, language barrier is probably the first one I noticed. I
Okay.
didn't realize like
Personal aspect, yeah.
like language was the biggest, and food.
Yeah.
Second one.
What was the one thing you miss about India?
Sense of community, belongingness.
Great answer, I agree.
I've always felt that lack of belongingness everywhere I go.
One best tip to improve focus. This is more for personal actually.
Again, I think less distractions, more mindfulness.
One best tip to maintain healthy relationships.
Active listening and intention.
Nice.
Like intention to spend time together, intention to fix or change, modify the relationship.
Yeah, and finally, I know you're a foodie, so deep dish pizza or thin crust pizza?
That is a hard one. Deep dish. I'm in Chicago. I'll go with
Midwestern person.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
more cheese, more. I'm sure I'm gonna get like crucified in
No, I think it's.
I feel like most people wouldn't pick it, so I feel like I have to pick it.
No, I think deep dish is great. I'm personally, I live in New York as well. I like thin crust. I like both.
I love thin crust too.
I like both as long as it's great.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I think I've just appreciated the. I feel like everyone's gonna hate me for this deep dish. Like I've really.
The Giordano's is really good.
Giordano's,
It's a-
Milanatis, like all those. Like
Yeah,
they're
they're really good.
good.
Yeah, and as long as I said, right?
But it's like a once in a
fresh,
while
good.
thing.
Yeah.
Not every
Too
time.
calorific.
Yeah, like I don't want. When I say my favorite pizza, that's not what I want every time I say
Correct,
pizza.
correct.
I would still prefer thin crust, just a classic.
Hand tossed
Hand
Domino's.
tossed
Nothing
Domino's.
works, right?
Yeah. That's my vision of a pizza. But
Yeah.
I do enjoy deep dish.
No, love it. Well, thank you so much, Kruti, for your
Thank
time.
you.
This has been a pleasure having you on the first episode. I think it was the best thing to have it with you because it removed all my nervousness as well.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully you're
And,
used to talking to me.
Yeah, this is the start of something special. So
Yeah.
super thankful. I hope you enjoyed
Yeah.
it as well.
I wish you all the best for this
Yeah.
podcast and this new venture you're on. I think you've
Yeah.
already come so far in terms of your content creation journey. So I'm
Let's see how it
sure
goes.
I'm sure this is gonna be just as great. I'm very excited for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And so that is what we have today for episode 1 of the Veeraj Show. I'll see you soon in the episode 2. Thank you so much for watching.